So will you pray with me? Gracious God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be acceptable to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. I think it was in Scotland when I first remembered to breathe. Now, granted, I was also panting, having just cycled to the top of a hill, covering several miles on winding island roads straight into the wind. But that was different. That was just some out-of-shape, middle-aged woman gasping for air. What I'm talking about was a sudden consciousness of breath, an experience of deep, lung-expanding, shoulder-relaxing, soul-nourishing breath. And it took me 3 weeks into my sabbatical to find it. Unless you have joined us just very recently, you all know that I spent a good portion of this summer on a sabbatical. From May to August, I stepped away from my role here as pastor and took an intentional time out. The wise folks from this church who drew up my hiring call agreement 6 years ago, and yes, it's been 6 years, carved out this time for me because they knew that maintaining my passion for ministry would be essential, and that rest and time away is a key element to staying spiritually and physically healthy. Pastoring is a weird gig. It requires energy on a lot of different fronts. Okay. All right, here we go. So pastoring is weird. It requires energy on a lot of different fronts, and there really isn't, unlike this microphone, an off switch, which means that the possibility for overextending yourself or burning out is always very present. There is always one more person to call, or another sermon to write, or a meeting to attend, or a course to teach, or a crisis to address, and then of course there's a new Sunday every week, so it starts all over again. After 5 years of ministry in this fabulous, growing, energetic, faith-filled church, it seemed like I had to make an appointment with myself to breathe. But really, isn't that also a lot like your lives? Don't you feel constantly pulled to share your energy, to solve problems, to juggle relationships, to do more, to make more, to be more every day? Isn't this just part of the modern human experience? Whether you are just getting started in your career or whether you are post-retirement, whether you are a student, a parent, an adult child, a partner, a spouse, whether you are following your bliss or simply facing the daily grind, it can be near impossible to catch your breath. So before I even get into the heart of my message this morning, first, we are going to breathe. Yes, we are going to turn off our busy minds for a moment, and we are simply going to breathe. Breathe like we mean it, 3 times. Are you ready? Okay. Take a deep, cleansing breath. Feel your lungs expanding, and let it out. Again, relax your shoulders. One more time. Do you feel better? Just a little bit? I know that I do. Breathing intentionally is one of the ways that I have been able to keep that wonderful sabbatical moment alive in me. Because I don't need to tell you, it can be hard to remember to breathe in this world that we live in. It can be hard to find ways to slow down, to let go of the static and the stress and the constant busyness that characterizes our lives. Our culture has a message for us, and it's hurry up. Hurry up and learn. Hurry up and earn. Hurry up and achieve. Hurry up and build. Hurry up and earn some more. Redo your kitchen. Get that perfect body. Sign your kid up for Mandarin lessons. Coach the travel soccer team. And just so you can pay for all this, hurry up and earn some more. This is the life that is held out to us as the American dream, the goal of all of our striving and learning. The reason we wake up in the morning, We define ourselves as producers and consumers in a constant, endless cycle. And because this cycle surrounds us so completely, we often don't even realize we are in it. It is simply normal life for us. From the cradle, we are taught that our happiness, our fulfillment, our humanity comes from making and doing and having. And all that making and doing and having is just not going to happen by itself, is it? We have to prepare and plan. We have to make lists. We have to network. How else are we possibly going to reach that magical place called the good life? And yet with all this frantic striving, we have lost the time and the space to ask ourselves, what makes my life good? Harvard President Neil Rudenstein overslept one morning in November of 1994. He was in the midst of a $1 million a day fundraising campaign. He was at the pinnacle of his career. He was the kind of type A overachiever that made the cover of magazines. He was someone who, by all accounts, had achieved that good life. But that late morning was just the beginning. Soon after, in the midst of a board meeting, Dr. Rudenstein collapsed. Only after a 3-month sabbatical that he spent listening to Ravel and reading Lewis Thomas and walking a beach every day with his wife, could he return to his post. He once again found himself on the cover of Newsweek, but this time next to the title, Exhausted. Each fall, we begin our time together with a special sermon series that speaks into our experience as spiritual human beings in an increasingly complex world. I spend the summer listening to the stories of people in this community, to my own heart, paying attention to where I see points of grace and stress in tension with our world. And here's what I've discovered this year. We are exhausted, and we need to learn how to rest. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, easy for you to say, Anne. You with your plum job with the fabulous benefits. How am I ever going to get 3 months off to relax? And you have a very good point. However, returning from that experience, having had a chance to breathe, to remember just who I am under all the layers of constant stress and striving, I realized that rest is not just a luxury for those lucky enough to work in places that allow us to do this, but a necessity for every human being. And I'm not actually talking about taking a 3-month break, something that is impossible for 95% of us, because you don't need 3 months to do this. It's nice, but you don't need it. No, I am talking about the revolutionary concept of Sabbath as a way to stay human. Ironically, the term Sabbath has so often been seen as an oppressive one for many of us. It might remind us of dull, pious Sunday afternoons spent in church clothes when we weren't allowed to play. If we are of a certain age, we might remember blue laws where you couldn't shop or buy liquor on a Sunday. We may think of the Sabbath as an antiquated Jewish concept, the 4th on the list of 10 commandments, one that might feel naive and anachronistic to us busy, modern Christians. But the Sabbath is not a pious, antiquated notion. The Sabbath, as originally given to us by God, is a way of saving our lives. It is a way of calling us back from the tyranny of endless production and consumption that seeks to define us. And it reminds us that we are not just cogs in a giant wheel, but beloved human beings, finite, precious, and made in the image of God. A God who rests. A God who understands that true creativity needs a balance between work and rest. A God who understands that we do too. And so, fresh out from under the tyranny of Pharaoh, God gives our ancestors the subversive commandment to keep holy 1 day a week, to be intentional about it, to buck the system, and to find 1 day out of 7 when they remembered that they are not made to produce and consume and be consumed, but to taste freedom and to thrive, to feel joy and gratitude, to dream and to love, to be human once again. So while the Sabbath can refer to a single day of the week, it can also be a far-reaching, revolutionary tool for cultivating those precious human qualities that can only grow in rest and time. Because without rest, friends, we are constantly responding to life from a place of survival, even a place of panic. Without rest, we don't act, we react. Without rest, without slowing down, we approach life at breakneck speed. And just like a bicycle that is flying downhill, even the smallest pebble can derail us. The Sabbath is an invitation to put on the brakes, to reclaim our balance, to actually lie dormant for just a while, so that we can cultivate the uniquely human capacities, the God-given capacities for creativity and wisdom and for delight. The Sabbath gives us time to stop and to breathe and to realize that our lives, at their most essentially human, are already good. But that's exactly why the Sabbath is a rather dangerous notion to the folks who depend on us staying breathless. The systems that benefit from keeping us in a constant state of hurried panic, busily forgetting who we really are so that they can sell us stuff to remind us. Instead of offering us renewal and connection, we are given distractions. The latest scandal, mindless entertainment, a fear-based political shouting match, anything to seduce us away from the inner place of refuge that we have buried underneath our constant fear of not doing enough or having enough. That place of refuge, that sanctuary exists, people. We were born with it, and we never truly lose it, because the most beautiful part of keeping the Sabbath is that you don't have to switch jobs or go on retreat or leave your home or your ordinary life to do it. You don't have to subscribe to anything or change your diet or even change your clothes. The Sabbath lives within each of us. It can be a day. It can be an hour. It can be a walk. It can be a nap. It can be listening to music or eating a meal with friends. It can be making love. The Sabbath can be any time that we surrender to our deep human need to reconnect with our source, to recharge our batteries, and to trust that the world will continue on without us. For these next 4 weeks, we will gather here intentionally in this refuge, in this sanctuary, to remember just that. Like the flight attendant tells us, before you can help anyone else to breathe, you have to be sure you are breathing first. So let's practice our breathing once again. Let's settle into this sacred space, this refuge, this sanctuary, and let's let our shoulders drop. Find that place in yourself where you remember that you are a precious human being, and let's breathe. Surrender to your breath. The world can carry on without us for this one moment. Even God knows to take a day off. Surely we can too. Amen.